Power is not about being loud. It's not about being feared. It's not even about being admired. It's about becoming untouchable. A presence no one dares to attack. A force no one knows how to stop. A man who cannot be baited, broken, or removed. And that kind of power, it isn't given. It's built. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He didn't write about power as a prize. He wrote about power as protection. And he taught that if you want to survive, rise and reign, you must become immune to the games of lesser men. So what makes someone untouchable? It's not strength alone. Plenty of strong men have fallen. It's not intelligence alone. Plenty of geniuses have been outplayed. It's not even fear. Fear fades. What makes a man untouchable is discipline, restraint, control, the ability to move without being seen and to strike without being stopped. An untouchable man doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't react. He doesn't chase. He decides. He moves. And the world shifts around him, not the other way around. Machiavelli would call this strategic invisibility. The untouchable man makes few enemies because he gives few targets. He's hard to corner because he never speaks too much. He's hard to trap because he shows little emotion. And he's hard to predict because he never fights battles that don't serve his long-term goal. Fools can't touch him. Critics can't pin him. And even rivals, when they try to strike, find nothing to grab. Because the untouchable man is not a reactor. He's a ruler. He initiates. He sets tempo. And that's the secret. Tempo. The untouchable man is always ahead of the situation. He never responds too late, never acts out of desperation. He controls conversations. He controls optics. He controls how he is perceived. Not by shouting, but by curating every movement, every word, every pause. Machiavelli would have advised him to conceal intentions until execution is unavoidable. Never reveal all of yourself, he said, because the man who cannot be read cannot be controlled. And that's your first step to becoming untouchable. Kill transparency. The modern world worships openness. They tell you to be vulnerable, to show everything, to tell everyone how you feel. But Machiavelli would call this self-sabotage. Why hand your enemies the tools to predict you? Why hand the crowd your playbook? The untouchable man holds his cards close, not because he's hiding weakness, but because he values leverage. He gives only what is needed, no more, and he watches what others reveal. This is how he always stays one move ahead. Second, the untouchable man knows when to disappear. Silence is not weakness, it is position. Distance is not retreat, it is power. When others rush to defend themselves, he waits. When others beg for attention, he withdraws. And in that silence his value increases. People wonder what he's thinking. They overanalyze his motives. They whisper. They guess. And while they burn energy, he prepares for the next move. The third trait, detachment. The untouchable man does not tie his identity to emotions, followers, or status. He is not addicted to praise. He is not broken by criticism. He sees all reactions for what they are. Distractions. He plays a longer game. Machiavelli warned against becoming dependent on the love of the people. It is safer to be feared than loved. He wrote, when you cannot be both. Why? Because love is fleeting. But fear stays. But even fear must be controlled. The untouchable man does not seek to be terrifying. He simply becomes respected, and respect is built on distance, discipline, and decisiveness. So how do you apply this? Start moving slower. Start speaking less. Start making people earn your response. Start withholding your thoughts until they serve your purpose. Start measuring your tone, your appearance, your rhythm, because to be untouchable, you must stop being available. You must become rare, calculated, composed, and when you do, the world treats you differently. Suddenly, people think twice before opposing you. Suddenly, they watch what they say around you. Suddenly, your words carry weight. Not because you said more, but because you said less. That's when you know you're becoming untouchable. Not when they admire you, but when they can't figure out how to get to you. Once you stop being easily accessed, you stop being easily attacked. That's the law. People only throw stones at what's close enough to hit. But the untouchable man, he's distant. He's not emotionally reactive. He's not physically everywhere. He's not digitally flooding feeds with opinions and noise. He's present, but selective. Machiavelli would say, avoid being too familiar, because familiarity breeds contempt. And when people think they fully understand you, they start treating you casually. The untouchable man never lets that happen. He controls what others know, and he controls when they know it. That's the edge. So if you want to become untouchable, you must master three things: mystique, minimalism, and movement. Mystique keeps people guessing. Minimalism keeps your message clean, and movement ensures no one ever knows exactly where you'll strike next. Most men are too visible, too loud, too eager. But the man who plans in silence and arrives with force, that man owns the room, not by announcement, but by presence. Mystique is your first armor. The more they know, the more they can use. The less they know, the more they wonder. The untouchable man doesn't share his process. He doesn't explain his ambition. He doesn't overshare in casual conversations. His answers are clear but never complete. Enough to satisfy, but never enough to decode. Why does this work? Because mystery creates projection. When people don't know your plan, they imagine one. When people don't know your power, they assume more. When they don't know your emotions, they become cautious, and caution creates space. Respect, restraint, minimalism is the second. The untouchable man doesn't move with clutter of speech, appearance, or energy. He's efficient. His words are chosen. His movements are intentional. His presence doesn't scream. It settles. People underestimate the power of stillness. They think action means movement, but the untouchable man knows that silence is sometimes louder, that stillness in a storm is dominance. So cut the noise, eliminate the extra. Stop explaining things to people who don't matter. Stop seeking validation from people who aren't strong. Speak when you must. Speak with purpose. Say less. Mean more. Finally, movement. The untouchable man doesn't move predictably. He doesn't walk the same path every day. He doesn't become routine. He is agile, strategic, unreachable by pattern. Predictable men are easy to trap, easy to study, easy to attack. The man who becomes untouchable is the man who makes his next step impossible to anticipate. You never know if he's coming. You never know where he's watching from. You never know what he's thinking until it's too late. Machiavelli praised this quality. A prince must learn how not to be good, he wrote, and to use this knowledge when it is necessary. What did he mean? He meant flexibility. The untouchable man doesn't box himself in with a fixed image. He can be kind or cold. He can be charming or silent. He can strike or disappear, but only when it serves the mission. That's what makes him dangerous. That's what makes him sovereign. And this leads to the most misunderstood trait of the untouchable man: detachment. He can like people. He can love people, but he does not depend on them. He does not lean emotionally on the crowd. He does not tether his value to applause. He walks away when it's time. He cuts ties when necessary. He moves on without bitterness. Why? Because his focus is higher. His aim is not to belong. It's to become disciplined, to become precise, to become sovereign. The world cannot touch a man who does not seek its approval. So the next time you're tempted to overshare, don't. The next time you're tempted to defend yourself, pause. The next time you're tempted to chase, wait. And instead, build, quietly, strategically, without emotion, until one day, your silence becomes your influence. Your absence becomes your message. Your control becomes your legend. And when that happens, you won't have to say you're untouchable. They'll already Most men want to be untouchable, but they're too easy to provoke. One insult, and they react. One rumor, and they spiral. One mistake, and they panic. That's not power, that's fragility in disguise. The untouchable man is different, not because nothing touches him, but because nothing moves him. Machiavelli would say, "A man who cannot control himself can never control outcomes." That's why the first battle is always internal. The man who is untouchable to the world is first untouchable to his emotions. He doesn't swing at every insult. He doesn't explain every choice. He doesn't chase reputation. Why? Because all of that puts his energy into other people's hands. And the more energy you give away, the more control you lose. Control is the currency of the untouchable. It's not just about strategy, it's about stoicism. It's about being emotionally unpredictable, calm under stress, cold under fire, silent under attack. That doesn't mean passive, it means calculated. The untouchable man sees the situation fully, but chooses his response deliberately, not emotionally. This makes people nervous because they can't read him. They can't get a reaction. They don't know what will trigger him, because nothing does. And in a world of emotional men, emotional silence becomes dominance. That's why the untouchable man doesn't defend his name. He strengthens his position. He doesn't argue online. He improves in real life. He doesn't chase fairness. He imposes standards. He doesn't need to win the moment, because he's playing for the era. And in every era, emotional control is rare. That's why it's powerful. Machiavelli taught that men who appear unpredictable in emotion gain power through fear, not because they are chaotic, but because they are unreadable. It is better to be feared than loved, he wrote, when one cannot be both. And if you cannot be feared by force, be feared by silence. Silence is unnerving. The man who says nothing during a storm is not weak. He is observing, measuring, planning. And when he finally moves, it's not to prove a point, it's to end the situation. That's what makes him untouchable. He doesn't show you his bruises, he shows you the results. So ask yourself, what moves you too easily? Where are you still reactive? Where are you bleeding energy? Is it in your need to be liked, to be praised, to be understood, to be defended? Those are cracks, and cracks get exploited. The untouchable man finds his emotional leaks and seals them. He doesn't let moods guide strategy. He doesn't let betrayal make him bitter. He doesn't let disrespect change his standards. He doesn't let applause inflate his ego. He moves the same calm, cold, certain, whether he's winning or waiting. This is what Machiavelli would call ungovernable sovereignty. Not rebellion against others, but mastery of the self. Because the man who cannot be moved emotionally becomes terrifying. He cannot be seduced by compliments. He cannot be baited by insults. He cannot be bribed with attention. He cannot be rattled by rejection. This is the man others orbit. This is the man others adjust for. This is the man who becomes inevitable. Not because he's perfect, but because he's unfazed. And while others burn fuel trying to be everything to everyone, he conserves. He moves with intent. He strikes when ready. He doesn't play for reaction. He plays for result. This is what untouchable feels like. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not viral. It's stillness, precision, and psychological dominance. The man who holds this, he doesn't just survive the world. He shapes. At some point, the untouchable man becomes more than just a threat. He becomes a presence, not a man people argue with, not a man they joke about, a man whose name shifts the tone of a room. Not because he's loud, but because his reputation precedes him. That's the next level of power, quiet legacy. Machiavelli didn't just write about seizing control, he wrote about keeping it, and he knew that in order to remain untouchable, your name must carry more weight than your words. Your past must reinforce your position. Because when you no longer have to prove who you are, everything accelerates. At this level, people don't challenge you directly. They whisper, they speculate, they try to guess what you're thinking. And that uncertainty, That's leverage, because men fear what they can't predict, and they respect what they can't replace. But to get here, you must build with discipline. Every move you make must reinforce your myth. Every decision must echo with purpose. You don't need to be perfect, but you must be intentional, because once you reach the point where your name does the talking, every mistake is louder. That's the trade-off. The more untouchable you become, the higher the stakes. One misstep, and the illusion shatters. One crack, and the entire image collapses. So you must protect it, not with ego, but with vigilance. You watch how you speak. You watch how you move. You watch who you trust. You guard your time. You guard your circle. You guard your reputation like it's your final fortress. Because it is. Reputation is not PR. It's not branding. It's not image. It's power. It's psychological territory. And once people believe you are untouchable, they begin to treat you as such. They self-censor. They self-correct. They second-guess before crossing you. Not because you threatened them, but because you trained them. That is what Machiavelli admired most. Not violence, but influence. Not chaos, but containment. The ability to dominate without touching, to rule without raising your voice, to punish without being present. But this influence must be earned through patience, through years of deliberate movement, through victories that feel inevitable, not accidental, and most importantly, through detachment. Because once you taste that level of control, the temptation is to defend it emotionally. But the truly untouchable man, he doesn't cling, he doesn't overreact, he doesn't defend what's already obvious. He moves forward, because untouchability is not a fixed position. It's a rhythm, a consistency, a signal that says, no matter what happens, I will not be pulled out of position. This unnerves people. They can't manipulate it. They can't provoke it. They can't disrupt it. And when people can't move you, they start moving around you. Carefully, respectfully. So ask yourself, are your actions building your myth or weakening it? Are your habits reinforcing your power or leaking it? Are your words protecting your name or selling it out? Because everything you do, every conversation, every appearance, every silence, either feeds your untouchability or destroys it. The fool plays for applause. The untouchable man plays for history. And when your name becomes stronger than your presence, you won the game. There comes a moment when the untouchable man no longer needs to speak, move, or explain, because others do it for him. His presence is embedded in systems. His values echo through alliances. His silence carries more weight than most men's speeches. At this point, he is no longer just a strategist, he is a standard. But how does that happen? Machiavelli would say, it happens when your habits become legacy, when your way of operating is so sharp, so effective, so unshakable, that others start adopting it without you telling them to. It's not imitation out of admiration, it's adaptation out of necessity, because your way works. This is the difference between influence and reach. Influence changes behavior. Reach only grabs attention. The untouchable man doesn't chase reach. He builds influence, quietly, consistently, until even his enemies use his language. This is power in its most refined form, when you no longer have to impose your presence, because the world already moves in alignment with it. It doesn't come from one big move. It comes from 1,000 small ones, disciplined days, sharp boundaries, thoughtful responses, strategic silences, and the refusal to betray your standard for temporary emotion. That's what people remember, not your opinions, but your edge. That's what makes people align, not your charisma, but your consistency. The untouchable man doesn't perform. He embodies. He doesn't shout orders. He operates in such a way that others mirror his behavior without even realizing it. This is how entire rooms change when he walks in, not because he demands it, because people have already adjusted to him before he arrives. Machiavelli taught that the highest form of leadership isn't force, it's structure. A ruler who must command at every moment is weak. A ruler whose presence structures behavior without intervention, that's dominance. So how do you build it? You stop breaking character. You stop compromising when it's convenient. You stop lowering your standards just to speed things up. The untouchable man is slow to trust, but quick to correct. He doesn't tolerate sloppiness, especially not in himself. He moves with conviction. He speaks when it counts. He distances when necessary. And when he acts, it's never random. It's deliberate, decisive, complete. This trains people. They begin to associate your name with sharpness, with finality, with quality. And soon you won't need to speak much at all. The world around you will begin to enforce your presence for you. That's when you know you've reached the upper tier, where people police themselves in your orbit, where disrespect never enters the room, where reputation replaces explanation. This doesn't mean becoming robotic, it means becoming sovereign. Your emotional world is yours. Your rules are clear. Your moves are rare, but exact. People don't guess where you stand. They remember the last time you made it clear. People don't test your patience. They remember what happened when someone else did. People don't challenge your position, because every time you've moved, you've made it hard to forget. That's what untouchable means. Not that you never fall, but that when you rise, everyone else feels it, and they adjust, because that's what power does. It doesn't push, it pulls. This is the final level. The untouchable man no longer thinks about being untouchable. He just is. It's in his posture, his words, his silence. It's not a performance. It's the result of years of ruthless refinement, of training instinct, of removing weakness, of choosing long-term power over short-term comfort. Machiavelli would say at the top, only one thing matters: stability, not emotion, not popularity, not drama, stability. Because once you become untouchable, your job isn't to gain more, it's to protect what you've built from within, to make sure nothing, no impulse, no insecurity, no softness leaks into your armor. And this is where most men lose. They get strong, they get focused, they build, they win, and then they relax. They get soft, they become predictable, and slowly their untouchability erodes, not from external attacks, but from internal laziness. So the final lesson is this: discipline never ends, control is never finished. You don't win once, you win daily. And the moment you stop treating it like war, complacency wins. The untouchable man treats peace like preparation. He understands that silence is not safety. It's setup, the same way a lion doesn't lose its edge in the calm between hunts. You do not lose yours. You keep the edge sharp, even when it looks like there's nothing left to prove, because proof isn't the goal. Permanence is. This is the weight of sovereignty. You carry yourself like a man who has everything to lose and no fear of losing it, because you've already trained for collapse. You've already walked through betrayal in your mind. You've already detached from applause, so when it fades, your discipline remains. And that's why you stay untouchable. Because nothing surprises you, nothing seduces you, nothing pulls you out of position. That's the final form. You are not addicted to motion. You are not thirsty for validation. You are not vulnerable to praise, panic, or provocation. You move like a ruler, not loud, but absolute. Machiavelli would tell you, the wise man builds his defenses in peacetime. He doesn't wait until war to get serious. He doesn't wait until crisis to get composed. The untouchable man builds before the strike, and when the strike comes, it lands on steel. So now ask yourself, are you treating your peace as a gift? Or as a test? Are you showing discipline when no one's watching? Are you keeping your rituals clean, your mind sharp, your circle tight, even when nothing threatens you? Because the man who stops sharpening becomes soft, and the man who becomes soft gets touched, and we don't do that. So if this message hit you, If something in you knows this is the version of yourself you've always wanted to become, then say it. Comment, "I am untouchable, and I will stay that way." Say it so it sticks, because now you've seen the blueprint. Now you know what Machiavelli knew. Now you don't just want power, you're ready to keep it. Watch the next video. The next level isn't louder, it's colder, sharper,